You're with Julian on the brown note and a few pieces I'm doing in a row on Ukraine and the current conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and this one about the hypocrisy and racism of the West. And I mean our politicians, our public, and our press. The attacks on Russia are one of the most one-sided portrayals of war I've ever seen, and I am against Putin. I am against the war in Ukraine. We cannot seem in the modern era to do anything but be polarized and binary about any issue. So if I dare say something that isn't following the Western narrative, I'm immediately a Putin apologist and I support the war, which is absolute garbage. I oppose Putin, I oppose the war, but I also oppose hypocrisy, and the hypocrisy over this conflict and the reaction to it is jaw-dropping. We all know which nation has invaded more countries over the last 30 years by far than any other, with the full support of the UK, Australia, and many countries in Europe, and that's America. Where were the international people that are crying now about the public in Ukraine being bombed when we invaded Afghanistan? We illegally invaded Afghanistan under UN rules that America is a signatory to. You cannot invade a country unless they are a threat to you. There was no threat from Afghanistan to America. They said that the Taliban facilitated Osama bin Laden, who was never found in Afghanistan. He was found in Pakistan, our ally. But that was the reasoning given. But there was never any threat from the Taliban to America. The Taliban even went to America to talk about oil deals. America supported the Taliban when they were called the Mujahideen throughout the 1980s, when they tried to foment Islamists against Russia, which they tried to do in many other countries as well. The hypocrisy here is jaw-dropping. We had no right to go in. If a terrorist group exists in a country and that group is Saudi Arabian, mostly, you cannot then invade the country where you say their base is. That is like the UK invading Ireland because of the IRA. It is illegal under international law to collectively punish a country for the actions of some people in it. The war in Iraq, we know, was about lies, weapons of mass destruction. It was a lie. These were illegal wars that America waged. Where was the international condemnation like we're seeing against Russia? Russia can credibly state that Ukraine poses more of a threat to Russia, which is on its border, when they've got NATO military bases in it, than we ever could about Iraq or Afghanistan, who were never a threat to the West. So the hypocrisy there is incredible. We did the same in Libya. We helped overthrow Gaddafi, who was no threat to the West, and left a failed state. Everywhere we went, we left failed states that cost hundreds of thousands of civilian lives and massive destruction. And we tried the same in Syria, and it didn't work. So we've got now a completely destroyed Syria with Assad still in control. America has skin in the game here. Even since the end of the Soviet Union, Panama was invaded, Grenada was invaded. You can go back to Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. Illegal wars. They have massive skin in the game when it comes to invading other countries for their own reasons that don't meet the international law criteria. And we are treating Russia very, very differently. We are targeting everyone that's Russian. When has this happened before? Did we go after American billionaires when Bush went into Iraq? When have we ever done this? Have we gone after British billionaires when Tony Blair sent us into Iraq and Afghanistan? Have we gone after the athletes and banned the athletes from Britain and America when those wars happened? When has that ever come up? Billionaires in America have poured billions into politics. They are every bit as supportive of the American regime as these oligarchs are supposedly of Putin. We are rounding up Russians globally for being to blame. I'm British and Australian. My countries went to war in Iraq and Afghanistan and supported those wars. I'm not to blame for that. I oppose them. The treatment here is beyond belief. We are banning artists from, there's an opera singer that's been kicked out of her New York residency because she once had a photo taken with Putin. This kind of behaviour hasn't happened before. It's a universal blanket condemnation that one country above all others deserves, and that would be America, for the huge amount of conflicts that it started for very poor and often illegal reasons. And there's an elephant in the room here, and that elephant in the room is Israel. Israel has been occupying Palestinian territories for 50 years or more. There are millions of Palestinian refugees. There have been numerous bloody conflicts inside the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, decimating civilian life by the Israeli Defense Force, and we're treating this thing in Russia as though it is, in Ukraine as though it is completely different. It isn't different. I'm sorry, you've got one people that are being oppressed and butchered by a foreign power, and they're different. Well, that's, and one country, Israel, has been condemned by the United Nations by even more people than Russia is currently being condemned by. In fact, by more times than any other nation since, I think, the 1970s, by a factor of about 5, Israel has been condemned by virtually all of the United Nations countries. But we still welcome Israeli billionaires with open arms in our countries. When do we blame them? When do we blame Israel? We let Israel host the Eurovision Song Contest. We don't care. They are those refugees and those oppressed people don't register. And then it comes down to our hypocrisy being also enormous racism. Australia, my country, has spent the last 15, 20 years making a massive political deal out of rejecting brown-skinned refugees from the wars that we supported. Now everyone is bending over backwards to take in Ukrainian refugees, as though that the other refugees who are brown-skinned and probably Muslim are not human beings. We have made political points in demonising these people. The hypocrisy and racism involved in this war is astonishing.